how to develop an ownership mentality. I'll be the first to tell you I don't know everything about ownership. I'm just going to be talking about some things that I've observed, I've learned, and I'm still in the process of learning. Robert Kiyosaki has a phrase, and we've all heard it before when they say mind your own business. And Robert Kiyosaki talks from an aspect of minding your own business economically. We've been programmed to mind other people's business through our school system. Our school system is unfortunately still programming our kids with industrial age ideas, and we're now living in the information and technology age. Are you totally excited when you get prepared for work every morning? Do you have to even hit the snooze button? If you have to hit the snooze button, that's just something to think about. Here's an entitlement mentality. I was talking to a gentleman one day, and he was talking about, he was at a stoplight one afternoon, and he watched a person in the car directly in front of him open his car door and push all of the trash on the ground at the stoplight. Now, why not keep that trash in your vehicle until you reach a place that has a trash can and you can put that trash in there? Why not do that? Why throw the trash on the ground and expect someone else to pick the trash up? I was meeting somebody for lunch one day, not far from where I live, to talk some business strategies. And as I was riding through the parking lot, I saw a gentleman who had to be well into his 60s, which means he should have knew better. He was in the parking lot with both of his doors open on his truck, and he was pushing all of the trash out of his truck into the parking lot. Now, if the police would have drove up and issued him a ticket for littering, he would have been upset. But those are people who have entitlement mentality because they feel like it's somebody else's duty and responsibility to clean up after them. We were taught to clean up after ourselves. One of the things we need to do, we have to focus on our dreams and not our challenges. I heard years ago that we need to change the phrases or change the wording around when we say something like, I can't afford that. We need to change it around and ask ourselves a question, how can I afford it? And that when you say, how can I, the mind starts working on solutions. First and foremost, we have to be willing to improve ourselves. Whatever we give our thoughts to on a regular basis is going to manifest in our lives. Whenever I talk, I'm always talking to me as well, so I don't want you to think that I'm picking on any individual or anything, because I'm always talking to me. Most people are operating in one of two modes, either survival mode or comfort mode. In survival mode, we want to make sure our needs are met. That's it. No more, no less. In comfort mode, our needs have been met, and we can afford a little bit more of the extras in life. We might be able to eat at a better restaurant than some of our friends and family members and associates. We might be able to go eat at Fogo de Chao versus McDonald's or Chili's or something like that. And I'm not putting any of those down. I'm just saying our economics determine, what can we do? We might be able to afford to go to a professional athletic event, on a regular basis or every now and then, when we live in comfort mode. When some concerts come in town, or, we might be able to afford a little bit better hotel when we go on a trip or take a vacation or something like that. It's all relative though. But when we live in those two modes, what happens when a crisis situation hits us financially? And that's unfortunate. Both of those modes are going to be threatened. We've been taught that when we retire, our income is going to decrease. But inflation and the cost of living are continuing to rise. In that thought process, we are actually planning on being poorer the older we get. Now, when you look at, we're living longer lives, because of medical advances, a lot of us are living longer lives, but we're living those longer lives less healthier. and you look at the cost of healthcare and things like that, and we're preparing to be poor, we need to change that thought process. I would like to say, recommend a book. And I'm always reading books. I'm always buying books. A lot of times there are weeks I buy 3 to 5 books at a time in one week. I don't plan on reading all those books as soon as I buy them, but I see something that captures my attention and I buy it. And I have it on hand for when I want to read it. I don't have to go looking and say, I wonder if I have that book, because I know each and every book I bought. So get the book Cash Flow Quadrant by Robert Kiyosaki. And that book will help you really understand where you are as far as your economics are concerned, what quadrant you operate out of. And, not putting one or the other down, but there are some differences. I know he really came onto the scene big time with his book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. But the book was largely focused on real estate. It's an excellent book if you plan on going into real estate. But for most people who are not going into real estate, the book went over their head. And like I said, not pinpoint any particular individual or anything. I'm just saying, we have to be prepared. And another book he's written is titled The Business School. He has several books, the purple and black books. The Business School teaches us how to involve ourselves in a system with other folks that's going to be economically beneficial to each party involved. And so, just something for you to think about, the Cash Flow Quadrant and the Business School. These books will help us develop a particular mindset. Everything that our mindset is fed doesn't come from books. We have to start thinking a lot of times about business ownership. And I know that scares most folks. We've been conditioned job, job, job. And so when we think about job versus business, just think about the community you grew up in. Now, I can't speak of what the conditions were like, what the situations were like in the community you grew up in, but just think about it. If you were fortunate to grow up in one of the better communities, look at the communities that weren't as fortunate. And what you'll see in the poor communities, you'll see a lack of business ownership. We can't rebuild older, dying communities without business ownership, and we can't build newer communities without business ownership. That's just the way it is. The poor communities actually lack businesses because of poverty thinking. It's the thinking. Society conditions us to go to school, get a good education so we can get a good job. How many of us know people that have a degree in one field and working in another one? Like I always say, that means that system is not working right now. In February of 2013, which was earlier this year, there was a stat that came out that said 53% of college graduates aged 25 and under are unemployed. Think the system's working? A job allows us to work on our skills, and business allows us to work on our purpose. Miles Monroe says that our job suffocates our purpose, and that's why we're depressed when we go to the job. We go to a place that is not us. And see, the more we accept where we are, the less motivation there is to grow. And so, a lot of times, my website out there, mjonesmotivation.com, a lot of people meet me and they say, oh, you're a motivational speaker. I say, no, that's just a title. I said, motivation is an inside job. I can't motivate you to do anything. I can only come and share with you, hopefully inspire you, and then you have to find out your motivation to move forward on your own. It's nothing somebody else can do for you. It's kind of like going to the bathroom. You have to do it yourself. Unfortunately, in our society, most people don't have an ownership mentality. You hear a lot of people say, my job, like they own it. Where were you at today? Oh, I was at my job. No, it's not your job. It's the job, because you don't own it. It's not your company. You don't own it. Now, don't get me wrong. Every job I've ever had, I always put my best foot forward. I worked hard. I treated it like it was mine, even though it wasn't, because when you treat it like you own it, you actually do a better job. You actually start receiving raises, promotions, and you start to actually get recognized by other companies who recognize your abilities and capabilities. And they want to bring you on board, and they want to pay you more money than what you're actually making now. There's a book I read that says a good man leaves an inheritance for his children's children. That means we need to stop worrying about just us. I was talking to a gentleman one day, and he said, well, I want my kids to have it just as hard as I had it. What kind of thinking is that? I want them to have to struggle. Now, we're all going to struggle in different areas. But why would you want your kids to have it just as hard or harder than you had it? That just doesn't make sense to me. And when we talk about an inheritance, we're not just talking about finances. We're talking about a moral inheritance. We're talking about values inheritance. We're talking about a social society inheritance. Because when we leave those type of inheritance for our children and their children, which mean their kids, our grandkids, all of society benefits. We need to be working at building assets to pass on to our children instead of working in somebody else's ownership so they can pass it to their children. If we've been told what to do all of our lives, we stop using our mind. Oppressors don't want the oppressed to think for themselves. Business ownership is freedom. Freedom demands more strength than slavery because it requires discipline. We have to take responsibility for our own destinies. Unfortunately, most people subconsciously enjoy the confines of slavery based on their actions and behaviors. We're never going to have personal freedom without economic freedom, and we're never going to have economic freedom without personal freedom. They're like Siamese twins. On our job, when someone else is dictating our affairs, we never find out who we are because they have control of our mind. From in my situation, at one period of time, I was working 7 to 5. Then I started 7 to 6, and then I went 6 to 6. Then I went 5 to 6. Then I went 5 to 7. And some days I went in at 5 in the morning and I didn't get off till 11 at night. So when your mind is controlled like that all day long, you never able to think because somebody else is telling you. You sit down and have a conversation with an employee for 5 minutes, and the boss happens to walk up, there's work to be done. Why are you sitting here talking on my time? So how does that make you feel? Some of the bosses chew on a sore spot all day long, and then you wonder why it hurt when you sit down. The goal of oppressors is to achieve complete domination and control over the human spirit, which is our subconscious mind. In slavery, the oppressor is responsible for the lives and conditions of the oppressed. And see, when we think about slavery, we think about what happened to black folks, up until 1865, and, there's some other situations as well. But have you ever thought about slavery today? They just let you go home. Then you got to come back tomorrow and be told what to do. Then they dictate what type of house you can live in, what type of car you can drive, how many kids you can have, what type of food you can feed your kids, where you can take your kids on vacation. They dictate all that, and you might say, how do they do that? Because they sign the bottom of your paycheck. Your paycheck determines your lifestyle. The less responsible we are, the more we need an oppressor. With the amount of students graduating from college, there are not enough jobs to go around, and that is part of the reason unemployment is high, but we keep continuing to buy into that misconception. If we want to own our own lives, we must have the financial freedom to make our own decisions. And I know a lot of people criticize others for making a lot of money. We should never criticize success done properly. Anytime you see somebody succeed, we should be congratulating them. We shouldn't be jealous and walking around with resentment in our hearts for that individual if they did it right. If we take orders from others on a daily basis or depend on someone else to sign our paycheck, we would never own ourselves. Fear kills a lot of people's dreams to own a business. Part of having an ownership mentality lies in our habits. I actually run 2 businesses from home. When I call somebody to make an appointment on the phone, I actually dress up as if I'm going to work because I am. I just happen to work from home. But when you dress a certain way before you make a business call, your conversation is going to come through in your conversation. If you're sitting around in your pajamas trying to make business calls, a lot of times that's going to carry through in the conversation as well, and the person on the other end can feel that. Too many people have an entitlement mentality. That mentality kills incentive and ambition. I have personally talked to people about business ownership, and I've actually had people ask me, well, do I have to report the income if I start a business for myself? Because some of these people are actually getting government checks and they didn't want to stop receiving a government check if they start making a certain amount of income. They didn't want to report that income because they didn't want to give up that free money. And it's not free. You know, when somebody's giving it to you, you know, it's not free. Because if they're giving it to you, that means they took it from somebody else. And so it's not free because they've taken your dignity away. That's a terrible mindset to have. The tax laws in this country are written to benefit business owners, not employees. There are over 300 taxes for business owners and about 40 for employees. The way to own our future is to own our time. If we work 8 to 5 for somebody else, are we really working 8 to 5? How long does it take you to get up and get ready to go to work? How long does it take you to drive to work? How long does it take you to sit in traffic and drive home? You know, so account all of that into your hours that you work per day, then divide that your hourly rate by that and see how you feel about that. We need to take control of our lives out of the hands of strangers. You know, pro athletes are high paid employees. We look up to them. But studies have shown that 5 years after their last day of playing, they are, for the most part, broke. A job is a temporary solution to a permanent problem. We have to start working on permanent solutions for permanent problems. We were created to control resources on this planet. We were not created to control each other. And a lot of people miss that. We were given dominion over everything on this planet but each other. I read somewhere that changing jobs is like switching deck chairs on the Titanic. It's a sinking ship, so we need to stop changing the view. Responsible people will eventually own and not rent. Your kids need to know that you have a vision for your life. Owners have power and control over their own lives and destination. Renters are powerless and helpless. Renters are followers and not leaders. There's a reason landlords ask for a deposit when you go to rent a place to live. It's so they can make repairs once a renter leaves. Most renters don't have an ownership mentality. So they know they're never going to get the deposit back, so they treat the place just like it doesn't belong to them. They tear it up. Most of us in society have been taught to think small, feel inferior, accept limitations, and lower expectations. There's a book by Chuck Swindoll written years ago, and you might be able to find it on some of the online booksellers, but it's not available in the bookstores anymore. But it's titled Living Above the Level of Mediocrity. And I mean, when I first read that book, it hit me between the eyes. And like I said earlier, when I first started, I'm always talking to myself because I had to learn these things. We have to learn how to plan for our own success, and that means setting some goals and developing a plan. We have to believe our dreams are possible. We have to believe we deserve success. Even in this economy, with all the doom and gloom that's constantly put in front of us on a daily basis, opportunity is still all around us. We have to start associating with people who are successful in business. Our self-worth automatically increases when we associate with people who think success. That means getting rid of some associations that we have right now. I don't think my wife would be appreciative if I wanted to marry all of my ex-girlfriends at the same time I was married to her. Every time we move to new levels, some people have to be left behind as we forge new associations. As I mentioned earlier, success is like going to the bathroom. You have to do it for yourself. Business ownership is not for weak-minded people. It's not for sensitive people. It's not for passive people. We are taught in the school system by employees how to become employees. In essence, we are taught by renters how to rent. Also in a book I read, it says, owe no man anything but to love one another. With that being said, when we have jobs, we're in bondage to another human being. Most people will stay away from the ownership mindset because it requires more responsibility than we're willing to give. We can't point fingers at anyone else when we get out there and do it on our own. Once again, we have to change our thinking about ownership. Dr. Bill Quain has written a book titled Prosumer Power, and it's probably not available in the stores anymore either. You'd have to find that online, and Barnes & Noble and Amazon could probably show you where some copies are available. But we've been programmed all of our life to be consumers. Dr. Quain talks about prosuming, which means you produce income at the same time you consume products and services. What most of us go and do is we go to work and earn our paycheck. We take it home to pay our bills. And then we go give what's left over to the same companies that employed us and gave us the paycheck. We give our money right back to the company. We will never qualify for freedom if we don't become industrious. To have that owner mentality, we need proper education. We have to gain wisdom. And we have to have faith to work in a higher power. Has anyone other than me ever thought about the Israelites? They wandered in the desert for 40 years and died because they refused to change their thinking and always complained about the situation. The clothes never went bad. The shoes never went bad. They had fresh food every day. They never had to eat leftovers. They had fresh manna raining down from the heavens every day. And all they could do was complain because they wanted to go back and be in bondage. They were over in Egypt eating garlic and onion every day. And they were getting fed fresh manna, which is almost like eating dessert all the time. I love me some dessert. I don't know about the rest of you. And when you compare the Israelites' time wandering in the desert, the average time we spend on a job is 40 years because people refuse to become owners. And they complain about the job the whole time they're there. You don't hear about people staying on job like our parents and grandparents did, where they started in their 20s and worked until they retired. The reason we change jobs all the time every few years or so is because we're not happy with the one we have for whatever reason. One of the most important things I think we can do is find ourselves a mentor. A mentor is very important. Mentors are not going to tell us what we want to hear. They're going to tell us what we need to hear. And when you find one who can talk to you like that and you can still have a relationship with him or her. Moses was the Israelites' mentor, and he was chastised for lowering himself to the former slave's thought process. The differences between rich people and poor people are rich people are more likely to own business. They don't blow money on vehicles. Almost always they own their own home, and they borrow money strategically. Rich people focus on net worth. They have their money work for them. They act in spite of fear. They constantly learn and grow. They choose to be paid based on results. They always think they can have both. They admire other rich and successful people. They focus on opportunities, and they're always, always, always willing to promote themselves and their value. The richest people build networks of business systems. You know, we think Bill Gates, somebody like Bill Gates, got rich off of software. No, Bill Gates built a system, and that's how he became wealthy. Building a business is the best way to become rich, and once your cash flow is solid, you can invest in other assets. Some people don't like to hear the word rich. It takes money to function. You know, we can't trade marbles anymore. You know, that just doesn't work. It takes money to give to charity. It takes money to build buildings. It takes money to help the needy. You can't give what you don't have. The movie Shawshank Redemption is one of my favorite movies of all time, and it shows us what it means to be institutionalized. The first guy who got released had been locked up for so many years, and I'll let you figure out what that means. He didn't know how to function outside in the new opportunity, so he committed suicide by hanging himself. The second prisoner escaped because he knew he had been falsely imprisoned, and once he escaped, he had created opportunity for himself. And see, what we missed before he escaped, he was putting asset in place so that when he escaped, he would have the financial resources to go and create his new opportunity. The third guy was released after being turned down for parole several times because the opportunity was not right. He happened to befriend the escapee in prison. The escapee reached his hand back and said, "I found a way to freedom, and I'm willing to help and mentor you if you meet me at this specific location when they release you." We need to realize when opportunities present themselves. Sometimes we don't recognize a gift because we don't like the wrapping paper. And see, I talk about that as well, about recognizing a gift when it shows itself. You know, we get all bent out of shape and all emotional because somebody has great gift wrapping skills. And so you think there's a grand gift inside that wrapping paper, only to open the gift and find out that the paper was worth more than the gift it was wrapped around. And then but we place more value on that gift because we figured, well, since they bought this type wrapping paper and these bowls, there must have been a lot of thought that went into this gift to find out it wasn't. And then we find somebody such as myself who can't, who doesn't have the creative ability and talent to go out and pick a great looking wrapping paper and bowls and things like that. I might go get brown wrapping paper, but I'm going to put thought, energy, and effort into the gift that I might be presenting you. But you'll look at my gift, and you'll look at the other gift and say, "Oh, Myron didn't put any thought into what he gave me." But inside the brown wrapping paper, the value was much greater than the other one. And a lot of us don't recognize that. We haven't trained our minds to that level yet. We have to surround ourselves with people who are smarter than you. We can't do everything by ourselves. You know, one of the great signs of leadership is that leaders surround themselves with people who are strong in areas where they're weak, because we don't need to focus our time focusing on weaknesses. The thing we focus on is what keeps showing up in our life. So if we keep focusing on an area of weakness that we have, it never tends to grow stronger. So take this information and use it to your benefit.